AITA for being heartbroken that my parents skipped my graduation for my sister's baby shower. Since I was little, I knew my place in this family wasn't exactly the center of the universe. It's not that my parents were bad, or that I lacked food, clothing, or a home, but if you've ever felt like you were always a bit on the sidelines, like a supporting actor in your own life, then you know exactly what I mean. There are 5 of us siblings. I'm the third. Between the extremes is my older brother, the one who was supposed to be the leader, and my younger sister, who, to no one's surprise, is the princess of the house. Me, on the other hand, I'm the son who always manages on his own, the one who doesn't cause problems, the independent one, and while it sounds nice, believe me, it's the worst label they can give you if you're looking for attention. For years, ever since my younger sister became the spoiled child of the family, my parents have seen her as a mix between a miracle and a precious jewel. She was born when they weren't planning on having any more children, and since she was premature and spent her first weeks in an incubator, my mom always says she survived by a miracle and that they'll never be able to thank God enough for giving them another chance with her. That ended up shaping the whole family dynamic. Everything she needs, she gets. Everything she wants, she obtains. Her mistakes always have excuses, and her triumphs are celebrated as if she just won a Nobel Prize. Meanwhile, I have to send my own achievements via email if I want someone to find out. The last straw was what happened a few weeks ago when I was about to graduate from college. Not just any college. I was graduating with honors from one of the largest universities in Texas. It wasn't easy. I paid for half of my degree with scholarships and the other half by working part-time while studying full-time. There were days I slept 3 hours, days I thought about quitting, but I got there, and I did it. I sent the confirmation email to my parents with the date of the ceremony and everything. They responded excitedly, saying they wouldn't miss it for the world. "We'll be there, don't worry about anything," my dad said. "We already have the flight booked," my mom added. But 3 days before graduation, I received a call. It was my mom. At first, I thought she was going to ask me details about the ceremony, if there was a guest limit, or things like that, but no. What she told me was that they had to reschedule their trip, that very weekend my younger sister, the jewel, of course, was going to have her baby shower, that it was a very important event for her emotionally, and that she would be devastated if they weren't there. I was silent. I literally didn't know what to say. Reschedule? After they had already told me they were coming? After promising me they wouldn't miss it for anything? My mom said she was very sorry, that they tried to find flights to be able to go to both events, but that it simply wasn't possible. She said they had already been to other graduations, and that a baby shower is something you only experience once, especially if it's the first. As if graduating with honors wasn't a unique event, too. As if it hadn't been me who spent years killing myself to get that degree. As if I were replaceable. And the thing is, in this family, sometimes I feel like I am. That night, I couldn't sleep. I felt hollow. Not angry at first, but empty. I called my older sister to tell her. She had already booked her hotel near campus and was excited to see me walk in my cap and gown. She listened to me in silence, and then said something that stuck with me. "You know, it's always been like this for them. She's special. We're just there to fill the photo. She has her own wounds, too." At her wedding, my mom spent the toast talking about how her younger sister had overcome birth complications, as if the wedding were just an excuse to tell that story again. Nobody said anything that day, but I saw in my older sister's eyes that something broke inside. After hanging up with her, I went on Instagram. Mistake. The baby shower setup photos were already there. Pink and white balloons, gold-lettered signs that read, "It's a girl." A table with personalized cupcakes with the future baby's name. And there were my parents, in the front row, smiling as if they didn't have another child. Not a single mention of the graduation, nothing, as if it wasn't happening that same weekend. So yes, they didn't come. My parents missed my graduation. My older sister came, my younger brother too, but not them. And the worst part is that it wasn't even an emergency, it was a choice. They chose the event revolving around their favorite daughter and left their other child hanging. What hurt me the most wasn't their absence, but the way they tried to justify it, as if it were something completely reasonable, as if the logical thing to do was prioritize a baby shower over a college graduation ceremony, as if it wasn't something that takes years to build up to. They told me that the important thing is that I feel proud of what I achieved, as if personal pride is enough when the ones who supposedly love you decide not to be present. I don't know if you've ever been to a graduation ceremony, but even if you're surrounded by hundreds of people, it can feel like the loneliest place in the world if the ones you most hope to see are missing. Graduation day arrived. I woke up early with a knot in my stomach. I dressed in the suit I had bought with what was left over from my overtime hours. I put on my cap and gown. I tried not to look at the empty seat I had left for them. I didn't want my mood to ruin the moment, but it was inevitable. I walked to the auditorium, and there were my siblings, my older sister and my younger brother. They hugged me tightly, congratulated me as if trying to fill the space my parents had left. My sister was carrying a professional camera. She said she wanted to take lots of pictures to show them what they missed, but I actually think she was doing it to give me something that would make me feel important. During the ceremony, I couldn't stop looking at the audience. It was ridiculous, I know. I already knew they weren't there, that they weren't going to show up, but part of me kept hoping they would arrive late, that they would walk through the doors just in time to see me walk across the stage. But no, I only saw other families clapping, shouting names, crying. I saw parents hugging their children as if they had conquered the world, and there I was, smiling on the outside, swallowing on the inside. When my name was called, and I went up on stage, I heard my sister yell my name as if her life depended on it. It was the closest thing to feeling seen that day. I received my diploma, posed for the official photo, and went down. My hands were shaking, but not from nerves. It was anger, it was sadness, it was everything mixed together. Deep down I knew this was going to happen, but another part of me had wanted to believe that, for once, they were going to choose me. After the ceremony, we went to lunch. Nothing extravagant, just a local restaurant that had space for celebrations. My sister had booked in advance. There were small decorations on the table, a sign that said, "Congratulations, graduate," which she probably made herself, and a small cake with my name on it. When I saw it, I felt tears welling up in my eyes, not because of the cake itself, but because of the effort, because even though my parents decided not to be there, my siblings were, because someone still considered me worthy of celebrating. During the meal, we tried not to talk about our parents' absence, but it was like ignoring an elephant sitting on the table. My sister was the first to break the ice. She said, "This has nothing to do with you, it's about them. They don't know how to handle the fact that not everything revolves around her." She looked me in the eye. "What you did is huge, and you don't need them to be here for it to matter." I nodded, but didn't answer because I didn't need them to be there, or at least a part of me did. After lunch, we uploaded some photos to social media, the typical ones. Me in my cap and gown, me with the diploma, me with my siblings. Nothing more. But since we live in this toxic era of appearances, the next day my mom texted me. Not to apologize, not to say she regretted it, but to complain that I didn't tag her in any posts. She told me that people were asking her why she wasn't at the graduation and that it made her look bad, that it would have been better if I hadn't posted anything. That's when I exploded. I replied with a long message. I told her that I found it absurd that her main concern was her image and not the fact that they left me alone on one of the most important days of my life. I told her that I was tired of acting like everything was okay, like it didn't hurt, that I didn't need any more excuses, that for the first time I would like to hear an apology without a but. Afterwards, she didn't reply. The next day it was my dad who called. He told me that it wasn't fair for me to treat my mother that way, that she did what she could, that being with my sister wasn't an easy decision. And that's when I realized something. If it was easy, it's because they didn't hesitate. They didn't call me to ask how I felt. They didn't try to find an alternative. They simply made the decision they were already predisposed to make. And the most painful thing, they didn't even realize what that implied. I've spent my whole life watching her get all the attention, how every little achievement was framed, while mine were ignored or considered expected. They told me I was the strong one, the one who didn't need as much, but what they really meant was, we're not going to give you the same thing, because we already assume you don't need it. But I didn't need them to come. I didn't need to feel that what I did meant something to them. Not for validation, but for the simple fact that they are my parents. After that call with my dad, I spent days not knowing what to do with all the anger I had bottled up inside. I couldn't talk about it without my eyes welling up. Not because of cheap sentimentality, but because I felt betrayed. It didn't even hurt anymore because of what they did, but because of the way they minimized it. What broke my heart was their indifference, that it wasn't a big deal wrapped in excuses. And the worst thing is that this wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't just that they missed my graduation, it was everything that had been accumulating for years. I started remembering things that at the time I had buried because I didn't want to accept that my own parents treated me differently. Like when my sister failed a class in high school, and my mom went to talk to the school to defend her, crying and saying that her daughter was going through difficult emotional times. When I got a C in a class, all I heard was, "Well, study more. It's not that complicated." Or when I got sick in college and ended up in the ER with a severe stomach infection, I was alone. I let them know, of course, but they only asked if there was someone who could accompany me. They didn't come. They told me they didn't want to bother me if I already had help. On the other hand, when my younger sister had a cold, and she didn't even have to go to the doctor, my mom flew to her apartment in Atlanta with soup, new blankets, and vitamin C. She didn't tell me. I saw it on Instagram, because yes, there is also public proof of the inequality. That week after graduation was strange. In theory, it was a time to celebrate, to make plans, to enjoy the closing of a chapter, but for me it was more like an emotional hangover. I didn't know what to do with so much anger that I had been accumulating for years. My older sister noticed that I was acting strange and invited me to stay with her for a few days. She lives in Austin, has a small but cozy apartment, and honestly, it was the best thing I could have done. We spent the nights talking and remembering things we thought we had forgotten, but that were actually still there, buried deep down, like a poorly healed wound. One night, while we were drinking cheap wine on her balcony, she said something that made me fall silent. "Do you know why this hurts you so much? Because you still expected them to be different, to change, to realize." And she was right. Despite everything that had happened, everything I had seen and felt for years, I still held out hope that at some point they were going to give me that place I deserve, that they were going to look and say, "Hey, this son is also worthy. He is also important." And no, they didn't. Meanwhile, my younger sister kept posting photos of the baby shower. It was as if there had been a festival. She uploaded a story with a wooden sign that said, "Welcome, my little miracle." The comments were full of people congratulating the most beautiful future mom in the world. My parents appeared in almost all the photos, with those proud smiles I've never seen on them when it comes to me. There were cakes, games, gifts, professional decoration. It was a big event, expensive, planned. And they couldn't take a 2-hour flight to see me receive my diploma. A friend from college asked me days later why there weren't any pictures with my parents at graduation, and it was like a punch to the gut. I told him the truth without beating around the bush. They preferred to go to my sister's baby shower. He looked at me in silence for a few seconds and said, "Bro, that's messed up." Just like that, no embellishments. And yes, it's messed up. But you know what's worse? That no one in my family, aside from my siblings, saw it that way. Because in our house, that wasn't a betrayal, it was a necessary decision. In our house, priorities have always been unbalanced. My younger sister sent me a message days later, probably because my parents told her to text me. It was something like, "I'm sorry you're upset. It wasn't my intention to hurt anyone. I hope you can be happy for me. I'm experiencing something very special." That was the message. Nothing about, "I understand why it hurt you." Nothing about, "Thank you for giving up your place for me." Nothing. Just a mix of self-pity and zero responsibility, as if I were the problem for not applauding her. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to cut ties completely, but because I honestly didn't know what to say without exploding. I find it incredible that she can be so wrapped up in her world that she doesn't even realize the damage she causes by absorbing all the family attention, as if it were a natural right. Sometimes I think it's not even entirely her fault. My parents raised her that way. They taught her that everything revolves around her, that love is measured in physical presence, gifts, and the sacrifices of others. And that's what she learned. After all this, I started talking more with my siblings about what we had experienced all these years. I discovered that I wasn't alone, that they also carried similar wounds, that for years we believed we were the ones who needed less, that we had normalized a kind of emotional abandonment disguised as independence. And now, in our 20s, it was catching up with us. A few weeks passed, and silence with my parents became the norm. They didn't text, they didn't call, they didn't ask how I was doing. There was no real attempt to repair the damage. I guess in their minds they were waiting for my anger to pass, as if this were just another tantrum, something momentary, as if they hadn't crossed a line that can no longer be undone. But this wasn't a misunderstanding, It wasn't a passing argument. It was a clear choice, putting one daughter above the other, once again. I started to notice how strange it was that no one in the extended family commented on my graduation. No uncle, no cousin, no congratulations on your achievement in the family WhatsApp group. Nothing. Instead, my sister's baby shower continued to generate comments and photos. It was as if the whole family unconsciously aligned themselves with a narrative in which she is always the center and everything else is just background noise. I wondered if my mom had mentioned my graduation to anyone, or if it simply wasn't worth bringing up because there were no family photos to share. One night, while going through my things, I came across a letter I wrote in 7th grade for a school assignment. It was a letter to me from the future, the typical cliché assignment. In it, I said something like, "I hope when you read this your parents are proud of you and go to all your graduations." I laughed, not out of amusement, but out of that kind of bitter laughter that only comes when you realize that the child you were expected more than the adults gave you. I'm not going to lie, I had a phase where I felt guilty for being upset. I thought I was overreacting, that maybe it was a bad coincidence, that flights were expensive, that maybe it was a difficult decision for them. I swallowed all those ideas that you tell yourself to soften reality. But then, when I looked back, I realized something very clearly. They would never have missed one of my sister's events. Never. If it had been her graduation or anything else important to her, they would have moved heaven and earth to be there because they've done it before. I remembered when she participated in a gymnastics competition when she was a child. Nothing important, just something local. My parents traveled 5 hours by car with her and stayed in a cheap motel so as not to miss her routine. And it was a competition where she didn't even win anything. On the other hand, I was on the debate team in high school and went to nationals. Nobody went to see me. They didn't even ask if there was a way to stream it online. And I kept telling myself that it wasn't a big deal, because that's what happens when they teach you to minimize what you do. You learn to settle for leftovers. One day, my dad finally texted me. It was a short message, without punctuation, as if he had written it in a hurry. He said something like, "We should talk. It's not healthy to be like this for so long." I almost laughed. Not healthy for whom? For him? Or for me, who has been swallowing in silence for years? I didn't answer immediately. I took my time, and when I finally did, I told him yes, we could talk, but if he intended for us to move on without taking any responsibility, then we better not talk. We had the conversation at a coffee shop near his work. It was awkward from the first minute. He looked nervous, didn't know where to begin. He asked me how I was doing, as if he really didn't know. I told him I wasn't okay, that I had been hurt, that I felt ignored, displaced, that it wasn't just the graduation, it was everything, the whole pattern, all the years of making me feel like I was competing for crumbs of affection. My dad, to his credit, didn't get defensive. He didn't tell me I was exaggerating. He listened to me, he looked guilty, and that, somehow, calmed me down a bit. He told me that he hadn't realized how much it had affected me, that he thought I was okay because I always managed, that he didn't know I felt there was such a clear difference in treatment. I told him that that was precisely the problem, that they never stopped to ask me how I felt about it, they just assumed that I didn't need what they did give her. And then something happened that I didn't expect. He apologized. It wasn't an automatic or vague apology, it was one of those that are said slowly, swallowing hard. He said, "I wasn't a good father to you. I thought I didn't need to make an effort because you didn't complain, and that was a big mistake." Hearing that moved me deeply, not because I forgave him instantly, but because for the first time I felt that someone from that house was acknowledging what had happened. It didn't change the past, but it did change how I felt at that moment, because it validated what I had felt for years. He told me he wanted to do things differently, that he didn't know if he could fix everything, but that he wanted to start somewhere. He offered to help me with my postgraduate plans. He asked if I wanted him to come with me to visit campuses. I told him I could consider it, but that I needed time. He said he understood, and that was it. We said goodbye with a slightly awkward handshake, but deep down I felt something like a breath of fresh air. The funniest thing was that that same night my mom called me, as if she had a radar activated. She asked me if I had talked to my dad. She told me that he had told her that I was still resentful. She asked me not to put her in the middle, that she only did what she thought was best for the family. That's when I knew she hadn't learned anything, that she was still in her own world, that empathy, if it didn't come with applause included, didn't interest her. I hung up without saying much. There was nothing more to say. What came next was like an awkward truce between my dad and me, and a silent war with my mom. He tried to keep in touch, sending short messages asking how my postgraduate search was going, even sharing articles or events from universities. He didn't overdo it with displays of affection, nor did he ask me to forgive him every week, but you could tell he was making an effort to change the way he was present. And even though the wound was still open, that willingness to move, even if it was little by little, meant more than he realized. My mom, on the other hand, was still trapped in her narrative. She wrote me several passive-aggressive messages saying things like, "I hope one day you can see everything we did for you," or "It breaks my heart to know that my son rejects me for a single decision." As if everything came down to that weekend. As if it had absolutely nothing to do with the previous 20-plus years where I was the invisible son, the one who had to applaud from the corner while the rest received the spotlight. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence says more than any argument. What did surprise me was that my older sister, who had always been more diplomatic, finally exploded. She sent me a screenshot of a conversation she had with my mom, where she told her that she was fed up with her emotional blindness. She told her that she wasn't going to stay silent anymore watching how they minimized the other children to continue protecting the favorite. That she was tired of every situation in which someone felt hurt turning into an overreaction or an emotional crisis. That we were adults now? Yes, but we were still carrying things that they had created. And my mom, as expected, played the victim. She said she didn't understand how everyone could be so against her. That she only wanted the best for everyone, and that if that made her a bad mother, then too bad. My sister responded with something as simple as it was brutal. It's not what you wanted to do, it's what you did, and you've never taken responsibility for that. I didn't see that conversation in real time. I found out when she sent it to me, but reading it was a relief, because for years, even though we knew things weren't right, nobody said anything, nobody broke the mold. And now, for the first time, I wasn't alone in raising my voice. There were more of us, and that changes everything. Meanwhile, my younger sister, the protagonist of this whole mess, continued as if nothing had happened. She didn't even try to have a serious conversation. On one occasion when we coincided on a family video call for a cousin's birthday, she acted as if nothing was wrong. "It's good to see you," she said smiling, as if she had completely ignored the fact that our parents chose her event over mine. And when she realized that I wasn't playing along, the awkwardness was noticeable. She left the call before we cut the virtual cake. And that's another thing with her. She's always had that ability to escape conflicts without getting her hands dirty. When there's tension, she disappears. When someone asks her for explanations, she cries. And our parents, especially my mom, rush to say that we shouldn't pressure her, that she's very sensitive. As if the rest of us were concrete blocks. As if we didn't have emotions that were worth the same. I began to realize how deep this pattern ran. It was no longer just between us, the siblings. It was a whole family structure set up to protect her from the world, even at the expense of others. She was never required to apologize. She was never held accountable. And now, as an adult, she continues to behave the same way. Everything revolves around her comfort. Everything is done at her pace. And when something doesn't favor her, she withdraws, plays the victim, and lets others clean up the mess. I began to see how this was affecting others as well. My younger brother, for example, confessed to me one night that he always felt he had to prove himself more to be noticed. That's why he got involved in activities he didn't even like. That's why he fell many times when he needed to talk. He said that seeing how they treated my graduation made him remember his own ceremony, where there were also excuses for why they couldn't stay long that day. They arrived late and left early because the baby was tired. When we started talking among the three of us, my older sister, my younger brother, and I, we understood that what happened with my graduation was just the catalyst, the breaking point. But the problem came from much earlier. It was a whole structure of inequality disguised as special needs. A family built around a central figure, while the rest orbited, with luck and at a distance. And that's where I started doing something I never thought I would do. Write it all down. Not to make a book, not to publish it, just for me. To put a name to everything that happens to us, that happens to me. Because when you write, you see it more clearly. It's like taking a weight off your chest that you didn't know you'd been carrying since you were 8 years old. And I started remembering details, dates, Moments when I kept quiet so as not to cause drama, when I swallowed my disappointment so as not to make anyone uncomfortable. Writing helped me accept that I'm not exaggerating, that I'm not looking for attention, that I simply want what any child deserves, to be treated with the same respect, the same love, and the same presence that is given to the rest. A few weeks after all that, my mom's birthday came around. That date that used to be almost sacred in our family, the day when we all had to show up, buy her flowers, write her long messages with nice words. Every year my younger sister made some kind of video compiling photos or mounted a kind of family tribute on social media, and we, the rest, simply followed the script. This year, no. This year nobody said anything. I had already made a firm decision. I wasn't going to call her. Not out of revenge, not out of pride, but out of consistency. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine just because there was a cake and balloons involved. My younger brother didn't call her either. My older sister told me that she sent her a cold message, something like, "Happy birthday, have a good one," without emojis or embellishments. But it was my mom's reaction that confirmed everything we already knew. She didn't care why. She was only bothered that we didn't surround her as always. She uploaded a post on Facebook, because of course everything had to go through there, saying something like, "Sometimes a mother gives everything and is still judged for what she can't do. A mother's love shouldn't be conditioned or tested by human errors." And there it was. Not a direct mention, but the message was clear. It was her way of putting herself back in the role of victim, of misunderstood mother, without even considering the idea that perhaps the human error in question has been repeating itself for more than 2 decades. The comments didn't take long to appear. Her friends writing things like, "Your children don't know what they have," or "Someday they will appreciate it." And yes, the worst thing is that I myself have been that person, the son who gave her nice words without checking if they were true, the one who thanked her for things he never received, the one who pretended that everything was okay because facing the opposite was too painful. But not anymore. I spent that day with my older sister and her partner. We had a simple meal at her house, nothing like an official celebration, but it did feel like something important. It was the first time we had gotten together on April 20th, my mom's birthday, without having to pay tribute to her. We talked about everything but her. We laughed, recalled anecdotes, and at some point my sister said something that stuck with me. Maybe the best thing we can do as adult children is stop chasing validation where we're not going to find it. After that, I started changing my focus. I stopped trying to fix the relationship with my mom, because the truth is you can't fix something that only one person wants to repair. And I don't want to force a reconciliation that only serves to make her feel better about herself without changing anything fundamental. At most, the only thing I want now is clarity and distance. My dad, meanwhile, kept trying to keep in touch. We started seeing each other more often. He accompanied me to visit a couple of universities where I'm thinking of doing a master's degree. He was interested, asked details, helped me analyze costs, scholarships, everything. I don't know if he's redeeming himself or just trying to be present now that he can no longer deny what happened. But the truth is that his effort is there, and I notice it, and I appreciate it. Not as a son who forgives everything, but as an adult who sees a real attempt. On one of those trips, while we were having lunch at a roadside stop, he told me that it felt strange not living the dynamic from before. I asked him what he meant, and he said that for a long time at home, everything revolved around keeping the peace, even if it meant stepping on some people. I believed it myself, he said. I thought that if you didn't complain it was because you were okay, but now I realize that you were alone. I didn't know what to answer. I just nodded. And then he said something I didn't expect. Your mom is not going to change. Not because she can't, but because she doesn't think she has to. That, said by him, carried more weight than 1,000 fights, because he had always protected her, always excused her, and now, at least, he was acknowledging the obvious, that the inequality wasn't a perception, it was a practice, and that some of us were tired of acting as if it didn't exist. Driving home, I put on music in the car and let my mind wander. I imagined my future, my life without having to ask my parents for emotional permission to feel enough, my life without waiting for recognition that will never come, my life with the bonds I choose to build. Because there comes a point where you have to decide what burdens you continue to carry and which ones you let go of. And I'm letting go of theirs. The relationship with my younger sister became practically non-existent. We don't talk. We don't follow each other on social media. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I have no idea how her pregnancy is going, and for the first time I don't feel bad about it. It doesn't hurt me, because understanding that I'm not obligated to love her just because we share blood was like freeing myself from a rope that had been choking me since I was a child. A couple more months passed, life went on as it always does, and I started getting used to this new family dynamic. Quieter, less demanding, less fake. The truth is that when you stop trying to maintain something that was always broken, you free up space for other things. I focused on my postgraduate plans, reconnected with friendships I had put aside to prioritize family, and began to realize how much energy I had been investing in trying to belong to a place that clearly didn't want me whole, only inconvenient parts. One day my dad texted me to tell me that my sister had given birth. It was a girl, healthy, beautiful, and with a name that carried some family history, as usually happens in those houses where everything must have a symbol. He told me that my mom was thrilled, that you could see it in her eyes. I replied with a terse, "I'm glad everything went well." And that's it, nothing more. No intention of seeing the baby, or sending gifts, or congratulating. Not out of resentment towards the girl, who is not to blame for anything, but because I didn't feel like I had anything to do with that event. I'm no longer part of that nucleus that revolves around the favorite daughter, and the sooner I accepted that, the better. A few days later, my mom reappeared with a long message, almost a letter. She told me about the birth of her granddaughter, about how everything had been magical, about how happy she was, and then, as if nothing had happened, she dropped the bomb, that it would be very important for her that I go to meet the baby, that the family should be united at times like these, that it would be a nice way to heal the wounds. That's when I realized she didn't understand anything. My absence, for her, was simply a tantrum that could be calmed with a new baby. As if a birth had the power to erase years of inequality. As if a hospital room, a pink blanket, and a smile in the crib could make me forget that they left me alone when I needed them most. It was as if she thought my silence was a pause, not a choice. As if she didn't realize that I didn't want to go back. I replied with something I had been feeling for a long time, but had never said in such clear words. I'm not going to meet the baby. Not because I have anything against her, but because I'm setting a boundary. I can't keep pretending we're a normal family just because there's a new member. It's not about healing. It's about respect. And so far all I've received from you is silence, justifications, and a constant invalidation of everything I've felt. I don't want to continue participating in that dynamic. And if that makes me the ungrateful son, I'm at peace with that. There was no answer. Silence. And it didn't hurt me, really. My older sister called me when she found out. She told me that she had been at the hospital out of obligation, just to avoid more drama, that she saw the baby, said hello, and left. She confessed that she felt something similar to what I felt, that this birth was like a reset, but one where we knew that history was going to repeat itself, that this girl was going to grow up being the new epicenter of everything, and that our parents were probably going to try to correct with her all the mistakes they refused to acknowledge with us. But at least we're not there to see it up close, she said. And she was right. Meanwhile, my life began to fill up with other things. I started a temporary job while I applied to master's programs. I moved into a small apartment, my first place alone, without roommates or family. It was strange at first, too much silence, too much space, but then it became my refuge. I decorated it to my liking, put books in every corner, hung my own achievements on the wall. That degree that nobody applauded in person, I framed it with pride, as a reminder that I am worthy for who I am, not for who applauds me. Little by little, the family reconfigured itself. My younger brother started therapy. He says he's realizing many things that he was also carrying, that he lived feeling invisible, that he now understands why he sometimes sabotaged himself. My older sister decided to distance herself too. She didn't cut off the relationship completely, but she put some distance between them. She asked them not to involve her in anything related to my younger sister or the new baby. And that, coming from her, was strong, because she had always been the one who tried to mediate, the one who maintained a thread of communication. But even she got tired. My dad, amidst all of this, kept showing up, more like a frequent visitor than a central figure. He started talking more about himself, about how he feels, also, excluded sometimes. He told me that he started sleeping on the couch a month ago, that there's no longer dialogue with my mom, that he's thinking of leaving, but he doesn't know if it's cowardice or patience. I didn't know what to tell him. Sometimes I wonder if he's also paying the price for having turned a blind eye for so long. I continue with my own thing, studying, working, living without having to justify every emotion. I started dating someone, nothing serious yet, but for the first time I feel like I don't have to carry an emotional backpack to have an honest conversation. I told her a little about all of this. She listened without judgment. She said, "It shows that you wanted them to love you well, but it also shows that you're no longer willing to beg for it." And that made me smile. The truth is that if someone had told me a year ago that I was going to break the cycle with my family, I wouldn't have believed it. Not because I didn't deserve it, but because for a long time I thought that enduring was part of the deal, that you had to forgive, be quiet, make space even if they didn't give you any. That's the most dangerous lie they sell us. That blood is thicker than dignity. And no, it's not true. Family isn't measured by DNA. It's measured by reciprocity, by respect, by presence when you need it most. And I've had enough of the other thing. Recently, I received an invitation to a small family gathering, one of those at an aunt's house, with all the cousins, nephews, and of course, the new baby. My mom was the one who circulated it, although it was signed by my aunt, as if they thought that made it less obvious. The note said, "It would be very nice if we were all together again, especially now that there's a new life among us." As if the arrival of that girl were a magic eraser capable of erasing everything that came before. I didn't reply. I'm not interested in sharing a table with people who only miss me when it's convenient for them, who didn't ask how I felt after my graduation, who didn't question my parents' absence, who not once stopped to say, "Hey, what happened with him wasn't right." My dad did text me separately. He said he was going to go, but that he understood if I didn't want to, that if I needed to talk, he was there. I appreciated the gesture, but I also understood that he's still part of that world that I'm no longer a part of. He may have good intentions, but he also allowed things to be this way for too long. I don't blame him entirely, but I don't feel obligated to accompany him in his redemption process either. Each person carries their own burden. The day of the gathering, I went out with my siblings, the three who were always there. We went to dinner, talked for hours, laughed as if we were closing a cycle, because that's what it was. Closure. Each of us with our scars, with our own stories of exclusion, each of us fed up with having to earn what should have been automatic. In the middle of the conversation, someone asked, "What if in a few years all of this repeats itself with the new baby?" We all fell silent, because we know that yes, that this pattern will probably continue, that this girl is going to grow up with all the attention, with the same miracle narrative, with the same privileges that we never saw. And that when she starts stepping on others without realizing it, nobody is going to say anything, because she'll be very sensitive, because she doesn't do it with bad intentions. But we also know something more important, that we will no longer be there to sustain that system, that we will no longer be silent accomplices. That if one day that girl grows up and starts to wonder why her family is divided, why there are uncles she has no relationship with, she will have to find the answers on her own. I don't wish her ill. Only that one day she hears the whole story. Sometimes people tell you that you shouldn't cut ties with your family, that it's better to heal, that you have to maintain unity. But nobody teaches you what to do when unity is built on the pain of some for the benefit of another. Nobody talks about the price paid by those who always keep quiet, so as not to clash. I paid that price for years. It cost me self-esteem, bottled up anger, important moments that turned sour. Now I am at peace. Not with them, but with myself, with who I am, with what I lived, with what I chose. I'm going to continue with my life, with my work, with my studies, with my relationships, with the people who choose me unconditionally, who celebrate with me without overshadowing me, who don't need me to break down to realize that I exist. If my mom decides to change someday, it will be her process, but it's no longer my job to wait for her. If my younger sister decides to see beyond her bubble, maybe we can have an adult conversation, but I'm not going to look for her. And if my dad wants to continue doing things differently, good for him. I'll accompany him as far as I also feel comfortable. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.